Ever feel like you're just swimming in information, but you're not really understanding it? Like you want the core ideas, the important stuff, without spending hours digging.
Yeah, information overload is real.
Totally.
But
And that's what we do here. We take the material you need to know, we dive deep, and we pull out the key insights. Basically, your shortcut to getting up to speed.
And today, we're starting something really important. We're looking into the challenges ESL teachers face, the stuff that maybe doesn't get talked about enough. We've gone through quite a bit of material,
Right.
including a report called ESL Teacher Pain Points and Bridge AI Solutions, and also, importantly, discussions from places like Reddit, where teachers share their real experiences.
Exactly. And look, this isn't just a one-off chat. This is actually part one of a three-part series where we're really going to get into the world of teaching English as a second language. So for today, this first deep dive, our mission is pretty clear. Figure out the main struggles, the big pain points these teachers are dealing with every day. We're using the sources you shared with us as our guide. Okay, you ready to jump in?
Let's do it. So, digging into the sources, one thing hits you right away, comes up a lot. It's the sheer amount of time
Right.
just gone into lesson planning.
Oh, yeah, the numbers are pretty stark, aren't they? It's like 38% of teachers mention this specifically.
Yeah.
And the emotion tied to it. It's rated an 8.2 out of 10. That's high. That's
Yeah.
not just a minor annoyance.
No, definitely not. It's clearly causing real stress. And you hear it directly from the teachers. We saw quotes like, I spend 3 hours nightly just to keep up. I'm exhausted.
Wow, 3 hours nightly.
Yeah. Or someone just asking, why isn't there a tool that does this faster? And this one really hits home. My weekends are gone because of lesson prep.
Ugh, that paints a picture. It's not just a few complaints. It sounds systemic.
Exactly. And the analysis in that first source, the deep dive section, it really quantifies it. It suggests ESL teachers might be spending, get this, over 30 hours a month just manually building lesson plans.
30 hours? That's nearly a whole extra work week on top of teaching.
Right. And it also points out why the tools you might think would help, things like Canva or Google Docs, maybe even Teachers Pay Teachers, why they often fall short.
Okay, so why is there that gap? Why don't those tools solve the problem?
Well, it seems like those tools, while useful for some things, they weren't really built for the specific needs of ESL lesson planning. Teachers end up having to grab stuff from here, resources from there.
Ah, so they're patching things together.
Exactly. They're manually stitching together all these different bits and pieces. It's just not efficient, and it leaves this big hole where a truly tailored ESL solution should be.
It really does sound like trying to build something complex with random parts and no blueprint every single time. You
Yeah.
can see why the emotional side is so strong.
Definitely. The sources talk about anger, frustration, that feeling of I'm sick of reinventing the wheel every week.
Yeah.
But there's also fear, like if I don't put in these crazy hours, my students won't make progress. And just plain sadness, too. Missing out on personal time, weekends just vanishing.
So if we think strategically, what does this tell us these teachers really need?
It seems clear they're desperate for ways to eliminate the redundant work. Not just slightly faster planning, but tools that actually take away the repetitive parts of creating lessons. They want their time back.
Right, so the source nails it by calling for a time reclamation tool, something that automates the tedious stuff, formatting, finding the right materials, maybe even aligning things to standards. It's about giving them back hours in their week.
Okay, so moving on from the time crunch, there's another major point that came up consistently. It's the lack of culturally relevant materials for their students.
Okay. How common is this one?
It's mentioned by 22% of teachers, so slightly less frequent than the time issue, but the emotional intensity is still really high at 7.8. That tells you it matters deeply to them.
Yeah, nearly an 8. That's significant. What does that actually look like in the classroom?
Well, the quotes really bring it to life. Things like, my Vietnamese students just don't relate to Western role plays, or teachers saying they need content that respects my students' backgrounds.
Makes sense.
And the direct result, generic worksheets is engaged class. You can almost feel the teacher's struggle there.
So what's the root cause identified in the sources?
The core problem seems to be that most readily available ESL resources just come from a Western perspective. Think about typical textbook scenarios, maybe holidays or social situations that make sense in, say, the US or UK, but are totally unfamiliar or even confusing for students from elsewhere.
Right, and I guess making your own culturally specific stuff takes more time.
Exactly. The workarounds mentioned, like using ESL library or teachers just creating their own things from scratch, they don't fully solve it. Making truly culturally sensitive materials is incredibly time-consuming, which loops right back to that first massive pain point, the lack of time. Our source calls this a gap filled with culturally static resources.
It's a bit of a vicious cycle then. What about the emotional side of this issue?
It's quite varied. The sources mention feelings like, well, discussed, there was an example of Vietnamese students literally laughing at a dialogue about a ski vacation because it was so irrelevant to them.
Oof. Awkward.
Yeah, but there's also hope teachers wishing they could just easily tweak examples to fit their students' lives, and sometimes it impacts trust. Using generic stuff can make teachers worry they look unprepared or, worse, insensitive.
Okay, so strategically speaking, what's the takeaway here? What do teachers need?
The big message is the need for what the source calls granular cultural customization. It's not just about surface-level changes. Teachers need to be able to adapt scenarios, examples, maybe even the way language is used to really connect with their specific students.
So like a feature that lets you easily swap out cultural references.
Something like that. The source mentions a potential culture adapt feature. Giving teachers that power to easily tailor content seems like it'd be a huge step forward.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you mentioned an emerging pain point next, one with really high emotional intensity.
Yes, exactly. This one is burnout, specifically from repetitive tasks. Now, frequency-wise, it's lower, about 12%. But the emotional intensity, it's off the charts, a 9.1.
Wow, a 9.1. So even if fewer teachers list it as their top issue, when it hits hard. What kind of things are we talking about?
The quotes here are pretty devastating, honestly. Things like, I'm quitting ESL because of the admin nightmare. Or just the sheer weariness. Why am I rebuilding the same flashcards every single term? And this one sums it up. I miss actual teaching. I'm just a paperwork robot.
Paperwork robot. Ouch. That really captures a loss of purpose, doesn't it? So, what are these soul-crushing admin tasks?
It's things like constantly recreating basic materials, flashcards, simple worksheets. It's manually grading quizzes and assignments. It's copying and pasting student info, all these little things that just add up and pull teachers away from, teaching.
And are there any tools helping with this kind of stuff?
That's the interesting part. The sources didn't really cite many specific solutions for this beyond just teachers trying to cope. It seems like a really significant gap, not much out there designed to automate these specific repetitive admin tasks in ESL.
Which explains the high emotion. What are the drivers there?
Well, you see real despair, that paperwork robot feeling, but also maybe some anticipation or hope for things like, say, automated greeting tools, and definitely a sense of isolation, like nobody gets how draining this is. It sounds really tough.
Yeah, it paints a worrying picture for the profession. What's the bigger implication here?
Strategically, this kind of burnout is a huge threat to teacher retention. The source mentions seeing lots of comments on Reddit from teachers actively considering leaving the field because of this administrative load. It's literally driving people out.
Okay, so finding a solution here isn't just about convenience. It's about keeping teachers in teaching.
Precisely. And the source suggests positioning solutions as a kind of burnout antidote. Features like auto-graded quizzes or easily reusable templates aren't just time savers. They could be framed as vital tools for protecting teachers' well-being and keeping their passion alive.
Makes sense. Okay, there was one more point, right?
Yes.
A secondary one.
Yes, the last one we'll cover today is student engagement struggles. This came up for about 18% of teachers, and the emotional intensity was a bit lower, around 6.5, but still significant.
Okay, student engagement. What's the challenge there?
It's the feeling of trying to connect with modern learners. You see comments like, Gen Z students just tune out traditional worksheets. And that perennial question, how do I make grammar fun? It's this constant battle to keep students interested and actively participating.
Why is it such a struggle? What's the root cause?
It seems to be a mix of things. One, traditional methods often don't grab students who've grown up with interactive tech. Two, teachers often lack the time back to point one to create really dynamic interactive activities themselves.
Are there any tools for this? The source mentioned a partial gap.
Yeah, so tools like Kahoots or Quizlet do exist, and teachers use them, but the gap is that they often still require the teacher to put in significant effort to create the actual content, the questions, the games. It's not always just ready to go.
Gotcha. So even helpful tools can add to the workload. What emotions come with this engagement challenge?
The sources mention feelings like shame, maybe, when a lesson falls flat and students disengage, but also joy, that real high when a fun activity does work and the students light up. And maybe even a little bit of envy looking at other classrooms that seem more dynamic.
Okay, so strategically, what's the need here?
It points towards a need for what the source calls plug-and-play engagement. Teachers need stuff that's interactive and ready to use, requiring minimal prep time.
Like pre-made games or activities.
Kind of, yeah. The source floats the idea of an engagement engine, maybe AI-powered tools that could generate interactive games or role plays that teachers can just drop into their lessons easily, making learning more engaging without adding more work for the teacher.
That sounds like a valuable direction. Okay, so let's quickly recap what we've covered in this first deep dive.
Sure. We've looked at 4 key pain points for ESL teachers based on the sources. First, the huge time sink of lesson planning. Second, the real lack of culturally relevant materials. Third, burnout from all those repetitive admin tasks. And fourth, the ongoing struggle to keep students engaged.
And it's crucial, isn't it, to remember these aren't just abstract problems. They have real day-to-day emotional impacts on these teachers who are doing such important work.
Absolutely. And understanding these core challenges is really the foundation for the rest of our series. In part 2, our next deep dive, we're going to explore that emotional landscape more deeply, the feelings affecting both teachers and students, and how it all impacts well-being in the classroom.
Which leads us to a final thought for you, our listener, to maybe mull over until next time. Thinking about these struggles teachers are facing, the time pressure, the cultural disconnects, the burnout, what do you think the knock-on effects are? How does all this really impact the students' learning experience and what they ultimately achieve? Something to consider.